My name is Noelle Carter. I'm 36 years old, and I disappeared 4 years ago. To the world, I vanished under disgrace, accused of financial fraud, hounded by investigators, splattered across every local news outlet as the wife of a beloved small-town entrepreneur who tragically died in a boating accident. And worst of all, I was called the woman who embezzled from his charity to fund a secret life. But that was his story, not mine. He faked his death. He framed me. And he ran off with my best friend. I know because I saw them last week, alive, smiling, and perfectly dressed in pastels on morning television. The screen flickered. There they were. Mason Carter and Camille Reyes, now living in Austin, Texas, co-authors of a best-selling book on grief and resilience, founders of a love and healing retreat for women. Their segment ended with a long kiss. She wore my wedding ring. I dropped my coffee. The mug shattered, and everything I'd buried burned back to the surface. 4 years ago, I was Noelle Carter, wife of Mason Carter, a charming man with the face of a Kennedy and the conscience of a con man. Back then, I was managing director of an investment firm, known for my clean record, trusted with the portfolios of people who didn't blink at 7-figure transfers. Mason had an idea to open a nonprofit for veterans. It was noble, and I helped him fund it. But when the firm discovered discrepancies in one of our accounts, the one I used to support his project, all the evidence pointed to me. I was fired within a week. 2 days later, Mason took his boat out on the lake. They never found his body. I was too dazed to question it. Then the FBI showed up. It took only 3 months for my life to be shredded. I lost my license, my reputation, my apartment. Even my mother stopped answering my calls. Camille never spoke to me again. I didn't know she had moved out of state, or that she moved in with my husband. I didn't vanish because I was guilty. I vanished because I didn't want to die. I moved to Berlin with what little money I had left, cut my hair, changed my name, and started over. Slowly, quietly. First, bartending in Neukölln, then bookkeeping for a chain of bakeries. Then a job offer I didn't expect. An anonymous investor needed someone to manage their wealth discreetly. Turns out, discreet and disgraced are distant cousins. The investor had shady pasts of their own, so they never asked too many questions. I grew good at hiding, even better at making money. By year 3, I had rebuilt a portfolio most people would kill for. 5 fake IDs, 4 passports, 3 shell companies. One purpose: to live free. But then that interview aired. They weren't hiding. They were flourishing. Their names, their faces, their lies broadcast to millions. I don't know what made them so confident I was dead, in jail, or too broken to care. But I wasn't broken. I was busy. And now I was awake. I didn't scream when I saw them on TV. I didn't cry. I didn't throw things or call anyone. I opened my laptop, turned on a secure server, and began typing. Step 1. Learn everything. I pulled public records, LLCs, property deeds, patent filings. I read their book cover to cover. Every chapter was a minefield of half-truths wrapped in syrup. She had become his cow-rider, confidant, co-founder. Together, they ran 3 healing retreats a year from their ranch outside Austin. The ranch was purchased under a shell corporation 5 months after Mason's death. They were rich. Now. Public. Loved. They had no idea I was still alive. Step 2. Become someone they can't ignore. They built a life on public sympathy. So I'd make sure the public watched it fall apart. Piece by piece. Emotionally, financially, socially. No poison. No weapons. Just exposure. I didn't want to kill them. I wanted them to beg me to stop. And I wanted to say no. The next day, I flew to New York. I still had one contact left from the investment firm. Dahlia. She owed me a favor for not exposing her own scandal back in the day. I cashed it in. Jesus, Noelle, she whispered when she saw me outside the cafe. You look rich. I am, I said, and I need access. She leaned in. To what? Everything Mason Carter touches. I want account numbers. I want their donors. I want to know where their money comes from and who's laundering it, because there's no way they built this clean. Dahlia was skeptical. You sure you want to go back down this road? I'm not going back, I said. I'm burning the road down. She took a long sip of coffee, then slid her phone across the table. Start with this, the retreat's biggest silent backer. A name you'll recognize. I looked at the screen. It was Camille's mother. I spent the next week assembling phase 1. I called it the reintroduction. Public reappearance had to be slow, shocking, and irreversible. They needed to see me first, before I ever spoke. I sent a bouquet of white orchids to Camille's book signing. No note, just the same flower she gave me the day I married Mason. I bought the seat directly behind them at a charity gala, left before dessert. She looked behind her 3 times. Then I sent Mason an email. Subject line, you remember Lake Geneva, don't you? Body, that was the first lie. I've been counting every one since. He didn't respond. But the next day, Camille canceled her podcast. 2 days after that, their ranch changed its listed security firm. Good. They were beginning to sweat. Then I leaked their fake charity numbers. Not directly. That would be too obvious. I contacted an influencer who ran a channel called Fraud Files. I gave them just enough info, anonymously, to investigate the grant misappropriations themselves. Within 10 days, Fraud Files uploaded a 42-minute expose titled, The Couple Who Built a Wellness Empire on Dead Veterans. You won't believe what we found. The video hit 1 million views in 5 hours. I watched them deactivate their comments in real time. I watched the unraveling begin, and I was just getting started. Friends in low places. If you want to dismantle a life, you start with the foundation. Camille Ray's was the weak beam holding up the whole damn structure. Everyone saw her as light and goodness. Morning affirmations, vegan brunches, cute earrings with little mantras etched on them. But I knew her. Under the soft, honey voice and faux humility was someone who loved power. She just hated getting her hands dirty. That was my job back then. Cleaning her messes, covering her tracks. Now, I wanted her off balance, uncertain, scared. So I fed her exactly what she used to feed me, attention. I found a man who could get close. Not just any man, Micah Voss. He was a lifestyle photographer, blue check certified, yoga body with just enough tattoos to feel dangerous. He owed me for burying a quiet little felony tax problem 3 years ago. I called it in. You want me to flirt with your ex-best friend? He said. I want you to make her think you're obsessed with her, I replied. And then I want you to tell me everything she says. And Mason? Ignore him. Camille's the key. Micah was in. Camille took the bait fast. Micah booked himself a spot at their next retreat. Posted just enough photos of books with highlighted passages from Healing Through Heartbreak to seem like a fan. Within 2 days, Camille reposted him. By day 4, she invited him to a private breathwork session. By day 5, he had dinner alone with her. By day 6, she was texting him after midnight. She's cracked open, he told me. Flirting, bragging, she's on something. Power, maybe. Definitely not clean. Then came the gold. She has a second phone. Keeps it in a drawer labeled Reiki stones. Only uses it at night. Can you get the number? Already working on it. Camille wasn't just hiding infidelity, she was hiding secrets. While Micah played inside, I worked the outside. Dahlia pulled the financial threads. Turns out, the Carter Wellness Foundation was a masterclass in fake transparency. Donations from women looking for peace were rerouted through dummy corps to shell companies in Belize and Panama. It was the kind of thing people only dig into if someone makes them look. So I made them look. I dumped the first round of data into an encrypted drive and sent it to an investigative podcast host I trusted. They loved drama, especially drama with a spreadsheet. Their episode went live within a week. Spiritual healing or spiritual hustling? The Carter Retreat Scandal, 2-in-1. Mason and Camille started bleeding followers before the episode was even halfway done. Camille began unraveling. Micah told me she'd started triple locking her door, sage burning twice a day, talking about energies returning. She asked him, dead serious, if he believed in haunted emails. I sent Mason one. Subject, remember Portland? Body, room 312. Friday night. You said the cameras were erased. They weren't. No signature, no return, no explanation. 2 hours later, Mason disappeared mid-seminar. Flew out to Miami, according to my tracker. Camille canceled the next session with Micah. I didn't stop there. I called Camille's mother. We hadn't spoken since the trial. She once told me I was like a second daughter. She also testified that she wasn't surprised Noelle snapped. I sent her a recording, just Camille and Mason laughing about how easy it was to bury me. She didn't reply, but she did pull $400,000 out of the foundation the next morning. Camille texted Micah that night, "Someone's trying to ruin us." Micah asked, "Who?" She replied, "I think Noelle." "But she's dead, right?" Micah waited 10 seconds, then typed, "Are you sure?" Camille didn't respond for 6 hours. When she did, all she said was, "She knows things no one should know." Good. That was the point. They had built a house out of smoke. Now they were choking on it. And I was just lighting the match. The echo chamber. You don't destroy someone by shouting louder. You destroy them by whispering in all the right ears. By the time the podcast hit 2 million streams, Mason and Camille had gone silent online. Their last joint post, some polished reel about moving through pain with grace, was now a wasteland of comments like, "Did you steal from veterans? This aged like sour milk? Where's the donation money, Mason?" But that was just noise. I needed their allies to turn. I needed the people around them, the ones they trusted, to see blood in the water. So I built the next phase. Phase 2. Collapse from the inside. Every kingdom needs advisors, and Mason had 2. First, Julian Park, his finance guy, used to work for a hedge fund in DC before he found purpose helping Mason manage the retreat's growing profits. Julian was smart, greedy, the kind of man who tells you he meditates before cheating on his wife. Second, Brianna Lyles, Camille's head of programming, wellness events, panel bookings, influencer partnerships, all ran through her. She believed in what they were doing. That made her vulnerable. I approached both, in very different ways. Julian was easy. I posed as a journalist working on a Ludlegzy profile for Wellbeing Weekly. Told him we were highlighting financial innovation and nonprofit models. Told him his name came up a lot. He scheduled a Zoom within hours. "You're talking to the man who streamlined all donation flows," he bragged. "Mason's great, but he's not a numbers guy." I listened, nodded, asked him where the money really went. "We diversify," he said. "Crypto, offshore, minimal taxes, all legal. Mostly." I asked, "Mostly?" He winked. I recorded the entire thing. Brianna needed a softer touch, so I leaked. I created an anonymous email, Posed as a former attendee. Sent her spreadsheets, receipts, quiet warnings. Subject: you've trusted the wrong people. Body: you seem like someone who wants to help women. Look where the money really goes. Then ask why you weren't told. She didn't reply. But within a day, I saw her remove the founder-approved badge from her social bios. Within a week, she stopped showing up to events. 2 more days later, Micah told me she packed a suitcase and left the retreat early. With cracks in their core, I went bigger. I bought ads. Full-page ads in yoga magazines, parenting blogs, and niche women's health websites. Each ad posed as a wellness transparency campaign with lines like, "Where does your healing money go?" Spiritual guidance or strategic laundering. You trusted them. Look again. Clicking the ad led nowhere. Just a blank page. But the message was enough. Camille sent out a newsletter begging for trust. Said they were under attack. Said haters were trying to erase their light. She didn't realize I wasn't erasing anything. I was revealing it. Micah was still embedded. He said Mason was unraveling in private, spending hours in his office, pacing, on the phone late. Camille, meanwhile, had started visiting a psychic. She keeps asking if her karma is coming for her, Micah said. And if you're dead. I told him, let her keep guessing. But I needed a bigger moment, one final nudge to shatter what was left. So I created a leak, a real one. I wrote an anonymous Medium post. Title: I was their accountant. I couldn't stay silent. I embedded fake but believable financial charts, screenshots of emails, carefully fabricated using phrases from Julian's bragging Zoom, and a breakdown of how the retreat monetized grief. I included lines like, "They call it healing. I call it harvesting pain." Every woman who walked into those sessions deserved better than lies. The post went viral in under 12 hours. A wellness TikToker read it word for word on live. Then another. Then another. The next morning, Mason called Julian. Micah overheard it on speaker. "You told me this was locked down. What the hell is a paper trail from 2019 doing online?" Julian stammered. "It's fake. It has to be. No one saw that doc but me." "Then someone is you," Mason said. "Figure it out now." Julian resigned 2 days later. Brianna gave an interview to the Wellness Watchdog. Camille stopped attending her own events. I wasn't done. The next phase was public, televised, and unforgettable. But first, I needed them to suffer in silence. Let the silence echo. Let the house collapse. Then I'd show them I was still standing. The return. You can only haunt someone from the shadows for so long before they stop flinching. It was time to show my face. Not just to them, to the world. I booked a seat at the Empowered Women in Wellness Summit in Austin. It was a 3-day event hosted by a magazine that once named Camille a healing icon. Of course she was scheduled to speak. Of course Mason was listed as a surprise guest. They were still clinging to their fantasy that a few press statements and rebranding efforts could hold back the flood. Let them try. I didn't use my real name. My new one, Sophia Lane, was enough. My credentials were real. My money clean. My image polished. I wore white, the kind of white that made people squint and pay attention. I made sure my hair was sleek, my posture sharp. Everything about me screamed successful, mysterious, unbothered. But the moment Camille walked onto the stage, her eyes locked on mine, and I watched her freeze. She faltered halfway through her speech about holding space for transformation. Her hand trembled. Her smile twitched. I didn't blink. She knew. She didn't say my name, but she saw the ghost and knew it had a pulse. After her panel, she vanished backstage. 10 minutes later, Mason appeared instead of her for the meet and greet. Micah, still undercover, texted me. She's in the green room. Locked the door, whispering to someone on the phone. I replied, "Tell her I said hi." Micah delivered it casually, said a tall woman in white sent her regards. She didn't open the door for the rest of the night, but I wasn't there to scare them. I was there to rip off the mask. Day 2 of the summit was the panel on financial integrity in healing spaces. I submitted a question anonymously. It was read aloud by the moderator. To the Carter Foundation, how do you justify continuing to take money from women in crisis while ongoing investigations question where those funds actually go? Dead silence. Mason tried to laugh it off. Camille blinked fast. The moderator tried to pivot. The audience murmured. I watched them sweat. Then I left. That night, I leaked the full Medium post-author identity, Sophia Lane. The next morning, I sent a press release, a public invitation to appear on State of Wellness, the biggest show in their industry. The producers had been hounding me for a week. I agreed on one condition. They had to invite Camille and Mason too. They did. The interview aired live. They were remote. I was in studio. "Miss Lane," the host said, "you've been very vocal about your belief that this couple defrauded not just the system, but emotionally vulnerable women. Why do you think they got away with it for so long?" I smiled. "Because I made them look good." A beat of silence. I turned to the screen. "Hello, Camille. Mason, did you think I'd stay buried?" Camille went pale. Mason leaned back in his chair. The host gasped. Social media exploded, and that was just the first 5 minutes. I laid it out, carefully, calmly. Dates, documents, motives. I never called them criminals. I called them architects of emotional manipulation. I described betrayal in precise detail. I spoke as a woman healed, not someone seeking revenge, but someone delivering clarity. They framed me for fraud, I said. They faked a death. They disappeared. And now they host retreats on resilience. This isn't about justice. It's about accountability. Every sentence went viral. When the segment ended, the host whispered, "That was the most powerful takedown I've ever seen." But I wasn't done. Not yet. Backstage, a producer handed me a flash drive, the pre-interview footage you asked for. It was Camille, nervous, unaware the camera had started rolling. "I don't want to do this," she said. "What if she shows up in person?" The producer asked, "She who?" Camille froze, then whispered, "My mistake." I smiled. Outside the studio, reporters were already waiting. "Sophia, are you pressing charges?" "Sophia, do you have proof Mason's death was staged?" "Sophia, is that your real name?" I walked past them. Didn't answer a word. The silence was louder. And Camille knew it wasn't over, because when I do press charges, I'll do it in person. The pact. The first time I walked into a courtroom, I was in handcuffs. This time, I walked in wearing Valentino. Not for revenge, for confirmation. Camille and Mason had always underestimated one thing about me. I keep receipts. I had everything. The offshore accounts, the foundation shell companies, even the deleted messages Mason sent the day before he died. I knew they were watching the headlines now. I knew they saw the social tide turning. But they didn't know what was coming next. They thought I was bluffing until the subpoenas were hand-delivered. To their lawyer, to their mother, to Mason's new legal name, which I'd traced back to a fake LLC he set up in Phoenix. Micah confirmed the delivery. Said Camille threw her phone across the room when she got the envelope. That's when I got the message. Encrypted. From a burner. Subject, truce message. You want a conversation? Name the time. One-on-one. No signature. But I knew it was her. Camille didn't want to beg publicly. She wanted to negotiate in the dark. I chose the place, a rooftop bar in Manhattan, private, upscale, and just loud enough to cover the sound of hearts breaking. She arrived before me, same soft pastels, same fake smile, but her eyes? Red. She hadn't slept. Nice view, she said, lifting her champagne without sipping. You always loved illusions, I said. Let's talk reality. She glanced around. You made your point, Noelle. No, I said. I'm making my move. I laid it out on the table. I had the evidence to bury them in court. I had the media in my pocket, begging for the exclusive. I had every document that proved they faked Mason's death. I had 10 women ready to testify how they were exploited at the retreats. Camille blinked. So what do you want? I smiled. I want him to pay. She flinched. You were a coward, I said. But he was the mastermind. And what do you get out of this? She asked. Peace, I said. On my terms. She leaned in. He doesn't listen to me anymore. He thinks he's untouchable. Then make him feel touched, I said. Give me the files, the backups, everything he thinks is safe. Her hand trembled. If I help you, she said, do I disappear? I looked her dead in the eye. You get to walk, quietly. No cameras, no charges, but only if he goes down hard. Camille nodded. That's the pact, I said. You choose who burns. 3 nights later, I had it all. Encrypted drives, bank trails, a recording of Mason bragging to Julian about faking paperwork with the coroner in Costa Rica. It wasn't just fraud anymore. It was conspiracy, insurance, wire, identity theft, federal time. I turned the drive over to the state prosecutor, and then I did something Camille never expected. I sent her one final gift, a clean passport, a first-class ticket to Lisbon, and a signed letter from my lawyer stating she would not be named in the civil suit. She tried to call me. I let it ring. Some pacts aren't made for peace, they're made for power. And I had all of it. The cage. The first court date was set for 9 a.m. sharp. Federal building. Downtown. 3 security checkpoints. 2 news vans parked outside. I didn't bring a statement. I brought my silence. And Mason, he finally ran out of places to hide. He entered in a charcoal suit, clean shave, fake tan, and the exact same smirk he wore the day he testified against me. I didn't look at him, but I felt his stare. The courtroom buzzed. The prosecution laid out counts like bricks: wire fraud, insurance fraud, identity theft, conspiracy. Then they pulled out the cherry. The video. Mason. Laughing. Bragging. Telling Julian the death certificate was handled. That no one misses a woman who won't shut up. The jury didn't flinch, but Mason did. For the first time, he looked scared. I left before the lunch recess. I didn't need to hear the whole case. My win wasn't the verdict. It was the cage. Knowing that no matter how slick his suit, how loud his lies, he couldn't talk his way out of this one. By week's end, the defense was in shambles. Julian turned state's witness. Micah submitted screenshots. And Camille? She sent a short, typed affidavit. Nothing more. Nothing less. She never showed up in person, but her silence said it all. The jury took 5 hours. Guilty. On all counts. Sentencing set for next month. Probation off the table. Prison certain. The reporters swarmed. Noelle, any comment? I gave them the same look I gave Mason that day in court. Nothing. Because some men don't deserve your words. Only your shadow. I flew home the next morning. Window seat. No makeup. No statement drafted for press. I just stared out over the clouds. And I breathed. For the first time in 4 years, I wasn't holding my breath. Later that week, I visited the woman who gave me back my spine, Dahlia. She didn't ask for details, just poured us wine. You look different, she said. I feel different, I told her. Done? She asked. I paused. Not done, I said, but clean. That night, I opened a blank document. Title, How to Burn a Man Without Touching Him. And then I closed it. Some stories don't need to be written. They just need to be lived. The aftermath. The sentence was handed down, but the battle wasn't over. They had lost in court, but Mason's network still thrived in the shadows. I thought prison would break him, but it only sharpened his hunger for revenge. Months passed. News cycles moved on, but I stayed vigilant. My phone buzzed late one night, an unknown number. A voice, cold and clipped. You think this ends here? Mason's just getting started. The message came with a photo. My car parked outside a dark alley. No scratches, no damage. Just a warning. I told the police. They offered protection, but no guarantees. I wasn't afraid. I was ready. I called Camille, once an enemy, now a reluctant ally. She answered after 3 rings, voice shaky. He's lost it. He's making calls, people who owe him favors. I told her, we finished this, together. We built a plan. Camille provided names, people Mason was using to operate outside prison walls. Micah and Dahlia dug into financial trails. I coordinated with the FBI. The final strike came on a rainy Thursday. Mason's phone was tapped. Camille confronted him in a recorded call, voice trembling but firm. You're done. It's over. He snarled, This isn't over, Noel. Weeks later, federal agents raided the last safe houses. Assets frozen. Accounts seized. Mason's empire crumbled. I sat alone in my apartment, the rain tapping on the window. For once, silence wasn't threatening. It was a promise. Rebirth. Freedom tastes like cold coffee at dawn. Bitter. Sharp. Real. The kind of bitter you swallow when everything else feels too heavy to carry. I walked out of that courthouse one spring morning. The sky was the soft blue of a new beginning. But I didn't feel like a new beginning. I felt like a woman who'd been burned down to her core and somehow found the courage to stand back up. For years I had been the broken wife, the scapegoat, the woman who lost everything, her reputation, her family's trust, her dignity. But that day, I wasn't her anymore. I was someone new. The walk to the car was surreal. Cameras flashed, voices called out questions I refused to answer. I kept my head high, my steps steady. Inside my car, I finally let the mask drop. I whispered to myself, I survived. Friends trickled back into my life. Some called with tears and apologies. Others reached out with rehearsed sympathy, their voices too light, too fake. I smiled politely. Inside, I was guarded. One afternoon, Dahlia came over. She was my rock through it all. She hugged me tightly, her eyes shining with pride. You look different, she said. Do I? I asked, surprised. Yes, stronger, like you've claimed yourself back. I nodded, swallowing the lump in my throat. Micah was the next pillar to return to my life. He showed up unannounced, a brown paper bag in hand. Thought you could use some coffee, he said with a smirk. We sat on the porch, the city humming quietly around us. I'm done running, I said. He nodded. Good, because now we rebuild. Together, we started building something new. Not just for me, but for every woman who had been betrayed by the people they trusted most. I founded the Phoenix Initiative, a nonprofit dedicated to helping women who'd faced fraud, betrayal, and lies regain their power and independence. The irony wasn't lost on me. I'd been burned by betrayal, but now I was using that fire to light a way for others. Public speaking became my armor. Every time I stood before a crowd, I told my story with raw honesty. Not for sympathy, but for strength. At my first big event, I looked out at a sea of faces. Women with haunted eyes and hesitant smiles. I spoke about resilience, about reclaiming control, about rising from the ashes. When I finished, the applause wasn't just noise. It was a chorus of healing. Healing, I learned, wasn't a straight path. It was messy. It was loud. It was sometimes painfully lonely. One evening after a talk, a young woman approached me. Her hands trembled as she handed me a letter. "I lost everything, too," she whispered. Her words cut through me, because I'd been there. And now I was proof that there was hope. Mason's name faded into the background, a ghost in my past, but my mission grew louder. The Phoenix Initiative expanded. We partnered with law firms, therapists, and financial advisors. We hosted workshops, created emergency funds, and launched a hotline. Every success story was a victory. Every woman helped was a flame rekindled. One quiet night, I sat in front of the mirror. The woman staring back wasn't the scared girl from years ago. She was unbreakable. I smiled softly. This was only the beginning. The final flame. They say revenge is a dish best served cold, but for me it was a slow burn, a fire I stoked with patience, precision, and unshakable will. 4 years ago, Mason faked his death, framed me for fraud, stole my life, and my best friend. Now, the world was watching him burn. The courtroom verdict was the opening act. But the real finale was social, financial, emotional. I had promised him pain beyond bars, and I delivered. After Mason's sentencing, I kept my distance, stayed out of the spotlight, let the media frenzy calm. But behind the scenes, the war was far from over. Mason's network wasn't just legal loopholes and shell companies. It was people, power, connections. They whispered in shadows, moved money like smoke, and threatened silence with violence. One night, my phone lit up again. Unknown number. No words, just a picture, a cracked window. My reflection fractured. Fear? No. Awareness. I told the police, who gave me a curt nod. Protection was thin, resources thinner. I leaned on Camille, the reluctant ally, her voice shaky, voice like a ghost. He's calling in favors, people who owe him more than money. We made a pact. End this, for good. Together. Camille and I built a dossier. Names, dates, transfers. The dirty underbelly of Mason's empire. Micah dug deep, traced wires, found offshore accounts buried in layers of deception. We handed everything to the FBI. Their interest peaked. Raid warrants drawn. The day came. Rain pouring hard. Federal agents swarming Mason's last hideouts. Mason's empire crumbled like sandcastles. Assets frozen, accounts seized. In the silence of my apartment, rain tapping on the window, I finally exhaled. But the scars remained. Invisible to most. Heavy on me. One evening, I sat alone with a glass of wine, staring at the ceiling, wondering what victory truly meant. Revenge had cost me. It had shaped me, but it had not broken me. Months passed. Phoenix Initiative flourished. Women healed. Lives rebuilt. I gave talks worldwide. My voice grew stronger. My story a beacon. Then came the unexpected. A letter. No return address. Inside, a simple note. Thank you. Signed, Mason. My hands trembled. Not from fear, but from something new. Closure? Maybe. Or the calm after the storm. I didn't respond. Sometimes silence is the final revenge. The journey changed me. From victim to victor. From ashes, a fire that refused to die. And as the sun rose on a new day, I knew this was not the end, but the beginning.